What's going on, everybody? And I hope you're enjoying your Sunday morning so far. This is NYG Jeffy T85 here, and I'm bringing you some New York Mets news that broke yesterday concerning the last couple of players that were sent down to Triple-A, and if they might be making their way back to the New York Mets sometime during the beginning or middle of 2023. Now, the New York Mets are pretty much getting ready for their baseball season to begin, which is going to start on Thursday. And the Mets yesterday sent down a couple of players that some Mets fans are a little bit confused on why they did that. And that is they sent down young prospects, Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, down to Triple-A-Syracuse. And the reasoning behind this is that Mets general manager Buck Showalter wanted to try to get more at-bats for these guys, and he wanted them to be able to get more opportunities in the field as well as at bat to really develop their skills and also be more ready eventually when they get called up, if there in fact there's more injuries that happen for the New York Mets or if certain guys underperform. I kind of expected this in the back of my mind. I, for some reason, thought that maybe Baty could get brought back up to the main roster or stay with the New York Mets, or even Vientos, because of the fact that the New York Mets are still a little bit shaky, because they're right now, Buck Showalter is going to be relying on the veterans like Eduardo Escobar at third base, and he's going to be relying on Darin and Daniel Vogelbach at designated hitter. But at the same time, and this correlates with Ronny Mauricio as well as Francisco Alvarez, there's going to be a point where you're going to see these guys back up here in the major leagues. Because as we always know, injuries happen all the time during the season. And with the fact of the matter is, if Eduardo Escobar, who got off to a very brutal start last year to his Major League Baseball season, and the fact that Darin was not good last year when the Mets traded with the Giants to pick him up, and he has not had a very good spring at all, as well as Daniel Vogelbach, it's not out of the question that you could see both Vientos and Baty coming back up here to the New York Mets sometime during the season. It's not out of the question. It's just when would be the right time to bring these kids back up to the Major League roster. Now, obviously, you have a lot to do with their fact that they have their extra time on their service years. That can be a reason why you don't call them up immediately. You want to extend their service years in the minor leagues just in case these kids don't have the best of starts when they get up to the major leagues. And with the fact that maybe these guys are just not where they need to be and you need to send them back to the Triple-A to get them more development. That could be part of the thing too. Now, I know Vientos tore it up during the spring training as well as Brett Baty. Ronny Mauricio also had a very good spring. But these guys, realistically, when they were coming up to the Major League roster, they were not going to get the type of consistent at-bats that Mets fans might have been looking for, as well as what general manager Billy Epler and manager Buck Showalter would have been looking for both these guys, because it's very inconceivable that Eduardo Escobar and Brett Baty would have been splitting time at third base, and Mark Vientos would have been in some type of platoon. And you don't want that for two young players like Vientos and like Baty. And then you have to look at Mauricio. What position really is Mauricio going to be playing? He's pretty much primarily been a shortstop or even a third baseman. And right now, third base is going to be occupied by either Vientos, Escobar, Guillorme, or Baty. And then you got designated hitter, which Vientos could occupy that too. So really, Mauricio doesn't have a lot of places where he could play right now. And also, you got to look at Alvarez with the fact that he's still trying to develop his overall defense in the minor leagues. But it's not out of the question that unless these guys get traded for a starting caliber closer or a guy that could come in and be a really good bullpen arm, it's not out of the question that you might see these guys get called back eventually up to the Major League roster, and eventually you see guys like Brett Baty and Mark Vientos and Ronny Mauricio and Francisco Alvarez some point during the season, because we're always going to see injuries during the Major League Baseball season. You're always going to see guys underperform or not get off to the strongest starts during the Major League Baseball season. And, of course, the Mets might want to get a look at some of the young players that might be tearing it up in the Triple-A. That's part of it, too. So, for instance, Mauricio, Vientos, Alvarez, Baty, if these guys go down to Triple-A to start the season and they are tearing it up, they're playing well, and then they're guys that are pretty much holding the starting spots for them, falter a little bit or they get banged up during the season, you can always call up one of these guys, bring them up to the Major League roster, and then there you go. You insert them into the lineup, and then everything is good. But that's the thing that the New York Mets fans have to be a little bit patient with. I understand why the Mets are doing this. They right now want to go with the veterans because they saw what Escobar did at the end of the season. They traded for Darin. They have Daniel Vogelbach, who they brought back. They have Tomas Nido, who they re-signed, and they signed Omar Alvarez. They want to give these veterans an opportunity right now to show what they can do, see how well they can play at the beginning of the season, if they can remain healthy, and at the same time, you put guys like Baty, Alvarez, Mauricio, and Vientos in the minor leagues in Triple-A-Syracuse. You let these guys develop even more, hone their craft, get more at-bats, and then eventually, when it's time, you could bring them up to the Major League roster when there's a spot available, and you could let these guys go out there and show the type of skills that we know these guys can perform at. And who knows, you might be seeing a core of these 4 players, along with Alonso, and Nimmo, and Lindor, and McNeil as part of the core of this New York Mets team going into 2023 and beyond. So just patience right now, and we'll have to wait and see what the New York Mets are going to do via trade and how these players and the veterans are going to be performing right now on the Major League roster going into the season. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quickly and just say my piece about the Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, Ronny Mauricio, and Francisco Alvarez being sent down to Triple-A-Syracuse, and why it actually is not the worst thing in the world that the Mets did this. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Give a sub to NYGJeffyT85. More news updates and chatter surrounding the New York Mets. And turn on the bell for notifications the next video or short dropping on the channel surrounding the New York Mets. And like I mentioned, leave a comment in the comment section on what you think about the New York Mets sending down prospects Mark Vientos, Brett Baty, Ron Mauricio, and Francisco Alvarez to Triple-A-Syracuse, and when you think you might be seeing these guys being called up to the New York Mets roster in the future. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take it easy, and let's go New York Mets. As always, all you got to do is you got to believe in those boys from Queens.